Guys, welcome to the show. Filming this on Memorial Day because it is in Salt Lake City, currently 50 degrees and pouring rain. Hence the wet, nasty dog right here that looks guilty for being wet inside the house. But I hope you guys are doing well. Let's talk about today remembering what the real estate game is, because I had a recent experience with this that, there was some frustration on my part for sure, but it also got me thinking like, man, people got to remember the big picture of this whole thing, right? Which is that owning a home and creating some sort of wealth is a goal for a lot of people. And that's not a goal for you, no problem. But let me kind of give you a little bit of background on this. Wet, nasty dog. So, had a recent deal that I've been helping a local client for like 2 months and probably 8, 9 different offers. Finally got one accepted, and then it fell through because it doesn't matter. But my opinion was because they still had the ability to go through with the deal, but they decided to pull out of it. And I really tried to get this particular guy clear on, remember what the big picture, you're getting like really short-sighted about this and you're really going to regret this shit inside of like 3 years. So let me just kind of give you an example. Let's say you buy a house at 450 grand, which is about an average price point right now. All right, just stay with me because these are just basic numbers, right? At the end of, let's just call it 3 short years with a, statistically about average increase in the housing market, let's just call it 4%. I think maybe 3 is like the historical average. Let's just say 4, right? Slightly above, but pretty modest, especially given where we just came from, which was like, 15, 16% a year. So 4% increase a year, totally realistic. At the end of 3 years, that $450,000 house would be worth $506,000, right? Because you increase 3%, 3 different years. By the end of those 3 years, you're at 506. At the end of those 3 years, you've also paid down, let's just say, I didn't ask a lender to confirm this, but I'm just going to ballpark it at 20, 25 grand that you've paid down on your principal balance on your loan. Because the reality is those first few years, you're getting hit mostly with interest. And so you really start making a dent on what you owe on your house in the later years of your mortgage, which is part of the argument for stay in that house as long as you can, because the longer you do, the faster, that's when you're really going to see the dividends of paying that monthly bill. Let's think about this, right? You bought a house for 450 grand. The value went to 506. What you owed went to about 425, 430, somewhere in there. So that gap, right, this space in here is what we call equity. And it's very tough to find a better vehicle to create some equity in your life than buying a house. Because the reality is, guys, right, you got to think about this. You're going to live somewhere. Isn't that fair to say? You're going to live somewhere. Even if it's under a bridge, you're going to live somewhere. Now, you probably don't have rent underneath the bridge, but whether you rent an apartment, at the end of those 3 years, you have nothing. Like, you had a place to live, you had a roof over your head, but nothing, right? Someone owns that building or that apartment unit that you live in. And all you've effectively done for the last 3 years is pay for someone else to make money off of your money, which is a horrible financial decision. It's a horrible financial decision if you were in a place that you could have bought a home. So the answer, guys, is always, and that's why I'm reiterating this, the answer is always, when you can buy something, buy something. It does not need to be perfect. In fact, I can almost guarantee it will not be, especially on your first home. Because the reality is, the people who are the most competitive are the people who are buying their second and third home because they sold their first home and they got that chunk of equity and they're going back to the marketplace to buy that second, third, fourth, fifth home, whatever it may be. They're the most competitive. They're the ones getting the perfect houses. You need to get a first-time buyer's home, unless you just walked into the lottery, in which case it doesn't matter. You can just buy whatever you want. Assuming that's not the case, buy something that might need a little bit of fixing up or might have a shit yard or whatever it is. It's like buy something that needs a little TLC. Because in 3 short years, right, the example that I just gave, which is nothing notable. It's nothing notable. I mean, nothing I just gave you is like come on, dude, you're really stretching here because you're trying to sell us real estate. No, I'm not. Like, I give you some very basic, very simple numbers. And at the end of 3 short years, you've got what, 80 grand in equity in your house? That if you ever needed to, right? Let's just say worst came to worst and you had some major life events. Cool. You could essentially use your house like a piggy bank. I wouldn't recommend it unless you have to. But isn't it nice to know that it's there? That like, hey, essentially I have a savings account called my house where there's 80 grand worth of value in it. And if I wanted to, I could take that money out. Or 5 years down the road, I could sell it and I probably got whatever, 130 grand that I get to now roll over into a down payment on another house, right? Or like, do you guys get the game? Because the game is so simple and people try to make it more complicated than it is sometimes. And guys, it's not complicated. Like, it's just not. Like, if you are renting something while you have the ability to buy something, you are pissing money down the toilet. It is that simple. I cannot make it any more clear to you. You will never predict the markets. You're not going to know when things are going to rise or fall, or if they're falling, when the bottom is. No one knows. No one knows. No one's a fortune teller. So when you can buy something, buy it. It is my number one message for people that want to buy a house. When you can fucking buy the house, buy the house. It's just that simple, okay? Lesson over. Let me give you, well, okay, let's just do this real quick here, guys. 60 seconds. If you're not interested in this, then turn away. On Thursday, I'm part of the High West Distillery, which is here in Utah, part of their whiskey club, which makes it sound really cool, but it's free, so you could be too. And I got an alert that they were doing a special barrel release of their 14-year light whiskey that's finished in this French brandy cask. And damn, son, because that's a unicorn bottle right there. Whether it's worth the hype or not, don't know. Can't tell you. I got my allotted 2 bottles. I will pop one of the 2 on a special occasion, but you can kind of see the light because it's a whiskey. It's not a bourbon, and it's very unique. You can look it up. It's kind of a separate mash bill. It's kind of its own thing, but highly desirable. These were, and I'm not saying this to flex or whatever, just to prove a point. So these were $125 retail, which is the most expensive High West bottle that I've ever seen. The secondary on the light whiskeys from High West is like $700, which is depressing and also shows you just how crazy the secondary whiskey market is. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. So I got 2 bottles. I'm very excited about these. Don't know when I'm going to crack them, but man, in terms of like unicorn bottles that are in my collection, frankly, there are not many. That might be number 1 right now. I mean, that might be the number 1 coolest thing that I've got, that I got in person, and I did have to cheat and do horrible things in order to get my 2 bottles, and I felt bad about it for like 3 seconds, and then I realized I was getting 2 bottles and I was fine. So anyway, if you guys need real estate help, let us know. Apologies for the rant on the whiskey, but sometimes you're just excited about these things, and I bring it to you, our 17 viewers. So hope you guys are doing well. Let us know if you need any help. Comment down below. Any questions you got, we'll answer them on the show. Thanks. See ya.